The spotlight had always been a distant dream for Rachel, a suburban wife married to Derek, a humble high school teacher. They lived a modest life, and while Derek was content, Rachel couldn't shake the yearning for something bigger. Watching reality stars flaunt their glamorous lives on social media made her restless. Fame, fortune, and the promise of a dazzling life felt just out of reach. The turning point came when Rachel's lifelong friend, Jenna, introduced her to Logan Hayes, a powerful Hollywood producer. Jenna was one of those who had made it. Her posts showed red carpet events, luxurious vacations, and dinners at five-star restaurants. Rachel couldn't help but feel envious every time she scrolled through Jenna's feed. "Logan's always on the lookout for fresh faces," Jenna said one evening over wine. "You've got the look, Rachel. You just need the right connections." Derek, overhearing the conversation, dismissed it as superficial nonsense. "You don't need any of that," he said. "We have a good life here." But Rachel's mind was already spinning. When Jenna arranged a meeting with Logan, Rachel found herself swept up in a world she had only fantasized about. Logan was charming, charismatic, and quick to make promises. "You could be the next big thing," he said. "But you have to be willing to take risks." The opportunities came fast. First, it was an audition for a reality show. Then, a modeling gig for a luxury brand. Rachel began spending more time in the city, attending parties and networking events, while Derek stayed behind, teaching classes and grading papers. At first, Derek supported her, chalking it up to a phase she needed to explore. But soon, the distance between them grew. Rachel became evasive about her trips and began avoiding Derek's calls during her nights out. One evening, Derek found a tabloid on their kitchen table, left by a neighbor. The headline read, "Hollywood's new starlet spotted cozying up to producer Logan Hayes." The photo showed Rachel, her arm hooked through Logan's, both smiling under the flash of paparazzi cameras. When Rachel returned home that weekend, Derek confronted her. She dismissed the photo as harmless, just a publicity stunt. "This is the industry, Derek," she explained. "It's all about appearances." But Derek wasn't convinced. The warmth and honesty he loved in her seemed to be replaced by a hunger for fame and validation. "Is this really who you want to be?" he asked. The final straw came when Logan offered Rachel a role in a major project, but the price was clear: her loyalty to Derek. Logan was subtle but persistent, hinting that her marital ties were holding her back. "You need to focus on yourself, Rachel," he said. "Sometimes, you have to let go of the past to step into the future." Caught between her old life and the allure of fame, Rachel made a choice. She moved into a hotel in the city, citing the need to be closer to opportunities. Derek, heartbroken, let her go, hoping she would realize what she was leaving behind. Months passed. Rachel's face began appearing on billboards and magazines. She was invited to exclusive events and interviewed on talk shows. But behind the glamour, she felt a growing emptiness. Logan's promises of stardom came with strings attached, compromises she never imagined she'd have to make. One evening, after a particularly grueling shoot, Rachel found herself scrolling through old photos on her phone. Pictures of her and Derek, their small but happy life, the moments of genuine joy that fame couldn't replicate. She realized the cost of her choices, but it was too late to turn back. Derek, meanwhile, found solace in his students and the simple life he had once shared with Rachel. Though he missed her, he vowed not to let her choices define his happiness. In the end, Rachel achieved the fame she desired, but at the expense of her marriage and the authenticity she once valued. The world knew her name, but she often wondered if it was worth losing the one person who had loved her for who she truly was. As the months turned into years, Rachel's fame reached its peak. She became a household name, known for her dazzling red carpet appearances and high-profile endorsements. Yet, behind the shimmering facade, the emptiness only deepened. The parties became repetitive, the laughter hollow, and Logan's charm turned controlling. Rachel realized she had traded one cage for another. Fame came with its own set of chains, unforgiving critics, relentless paparazzi, and a never-ending pressure to stay relevant. The roles she was offered began to dwindle as younger, hungrier faces emerged. Logan, 2. Moved on to his next muse, leaving Rachel to fend for herself in an industry that thrived on discarding the old for the new. One night, sitting alone in her penthouse suite, Rachel scrolled through social media, searching for a glimpse of the life she had left behind. She stumbled upon a picture of Derek. He was smiling, surrounded by a group of students holding trophies. A caption read, "Congratulations to Mr. Walker and his debate team on their state championship win." Rachel felt a pang in her chest. Derek looked happy, content in the life she had once dismissed as too small. She hadn't spoken to him since the divorce papers were finalized. At the time, she had convinced herself it was for the best. But now, staring at his picture, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the wrong choice. The following week, Rachel found herself back in her hometown for the first time in years. The once familiar streets felt foreign now, stripped of the glamour and excitement of her new life. She parked outside the small school where Derek worked and waited until the last of the students had left. When Derek finally stepped outside, he was startled to see her. "Rachel," he asked, his voice a mix of surprise and caution. "I was in town," she lied, her hands trembling slightly. I wanted to see how you're doing." Derek studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "I'm doing well," he said simply. "How about you?" Rachel hesitated. She could have told him about the loneliness, the regrets, the nights she spent wondering if fame was worth the sacrifices. But instead, she forced a smile. "I'm doing great," she said, the words feeling hollow even as she spoke them. They stood in awkward silence, the weight of everything unspoken hanging between them. Finally, Derek broke the tension. "I'm glad you stopped by. But Rachel, I've moved on. I hope you find what you're looking for." Rachel nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She wanted to tell him that she wasn't sure she ever would. But Derek deserved closure, not more confusion. As she drove away, Rachel realized that while fame had given her everything she thought she wanted, it had also taken away the one thing she truly needed, love that didn't come with conditions. Back in her empty penthouse, Rachel stared out at the city lights, a bitter reminder of her choices. She knew she couldn't rewrite the past, but perhaps there was still time to rediscover herself. And so, Rachel began to pull back from the life she had once chased so fervently. She turned down roles, stepped away from the cameras, and started a small charity to help aspiring artists find opportunities without losing themselves in the process. It wasn't the life she had envisioned, but it was real. And for the first time in years, Rachel felt a glimmer of peace. As for Derek, he continued to thrive, his passion for teaching bringing joy and purpose to his life. Though Rachel remained a bittersweet memory, he knew that some chapters had to end so others could begin. In the end, Rachel and Derek's story wasn't about betrayal or fame. It was about the choices that define us and the courage it takes to find our way back to what truly matters. Years passed, and Rachel's transformation slowly but steadily gained traction. Her charity grew into a well-respected organization that provided grants and mentorship programs for struggling artists and performers. It was her way of giving back, of making sure no one else had to endure the hollow compromises she had faced. Though she kept a low profile, Rachel occasionally crossed paths with people from her past life. The whispers of her retreat from the limelight were met with confusion and, at times, disdain. Hollywood wasn't kind to those who walked away from its embrace. But Rachel didn't care anymore. She was finding fulfillment in the small, meaningful victories her new path offered. One day, Rachel received an invitation to attend a local community fundraiser. To her surprise, it was hosted by Derek's school to support their debate team's upcoming national competition. She hesitated, unsure if her presence would be welcome. But something deep inside urged her to go. When she arrived, the gymnasium was buzzing with energy. Tables were decorated with handmade signs, and students ran around selling raffle tickets. Rachel scanned the room nervously, wondering if Derek would even want to see her. She spotted him near the stage, animatedly discussing plans with a group of parents. He looked different, older perhaps, but there was a confidence about him that hadn't been there before. When Derek finally noticed her, His expression flickered between surprise and curiosity. Rachel offered a tentative smile, her heart pounding. "Rachel," he said, approaching her. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I heard about the fundraiser," she said. "I wanted to help." She handed him an envelope, which he opened to find a check. It was a significant amount, enough to cover not just the competition costs but also other needs for the team. "Thank you," Derek said, his tone cautious but sincere. "This is really generous." "I owed you that much," Rachel replied softly. The two talked briefly, the conversation polite but distant. Rachel didn't push for more, sensing that Derek had built a new life for himself, one that didn't include her. But as the night went on, she noticed the way his students looked up to him, how the parents spoke of his dedication. It was a stark contrast to the world she had left behind, a world where everyone was disposable, where loyalty was a rare commodity. Before leaving, Rachel approached Derek one last time. "I'm glad I came," she said. "It's good to see you happy." Derek hesitated, then smiled. "And you? Are you happy now?" Rachel paused, considering her answer. "I'm getting there," she said honestly. As she walked out into the cool night air, Rachel felt a sense of closure she hadn't expected. She didn't need Derek to forgive her or take her back. What she needed was the clarity to forgive herself and the strength to keep moving forward. Months later, Rachel received a letter from one of Derek's students. Enclosed was a photo of the debate team holding their national championship trophy, with a note that read, "Thank you for believing in us, even from afar." Rachel pinned the photo to her desk, a quiet reminder that even after losing her way, she could still make a difference. Though her story had taken many twists and turns, Rachel finally understood that life wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about connection, purpose, and the courage to choose what truly matters, even when the world tells you otherwise. And for the first time in years, she felt free. Over the following months, Rachel found herself reflecting on how far she'd come. The letter from Derek's students stayed on her desk, not as a trophy, but as a quiet symbol of redemption. She didn't expect recognition for her charity work or apologies from the industry that had once devoured her. What mattered now was the steady, fulfilling rhythm she had created for herself. Her days were filled with purpose, meeting with young artists, organizing workshops, and attending community events. The Rachel who had once been consumed by the relentless pursuit of fame seemed like a stranger, a ghost from a life she had outgrown. One evening, as Rachel closed up the small office she had rented for her foundation, her assistant handed her a flyer. "You might want to check this out," the assistant said with a smile. It was an announcement for an upcoming conference on arts education. Among the speakers was Derek. Seeing his name gave Rachel pause, but curiosity got the better of her. She decided to attend, not to confront him, but to see how he had grown into the person she admired from afar. The conference was held in a modest but well-organized venue. Rachel slipped into the back of the room just as Derek took the stage. He spoke with passion about the power of storytelling, the role of teachers in shaping young minds, and the importance of encouraging creativity in schools. Rachel was struck by how much he had grown. He seemed more confident, more self-assured than the man she had left behind. It wasn't just his words, it was the way the audience hung on to them, inspired by his genuine commitment to making a difference. After the session, Rachel lingered by the refreshment table, unsure if she should approach him. She didn't have to decide. Derek spotted her first. "Rachel," he said, his voice carrying a mix of surprise and warmth. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I saw your name on the program," she admitted. "You were incredible up there."
Truly.
"Thank you," he said, smiling. "I found my place, I think." "I can see that," Rachel replied, and for the first time in years, she felt no pang of regret, only admiration. They ended up sitting in a quiet corner of the venue, talking for the first time without the weight of their past looming over them. Derek asked about her charity, genuinely interested in her work. Rachel told him about the artists she had helped, the struggles she had faced, and how she was slowly rebuilding a life that felt meaningful. "It sounds like you've found your place too," Derek said. "Maybe," Rachel said, her tone contemplative. It's different, but it feels right. As the evening wound down, Derek glanced at his watch. I should get going. Early flight tomorrow. Of course, Rachel said, standing. It was really good to see you, Derek. You too, he replied, pausing. And Rachel, I'm proud of you. For everything you've done, for the person you've become. The words hit her harder than she expected, but in the best way possible. That means more than you know, she said, her voice soft. As Derek walked away, Rachel didn't feel the usual ache of something lost. Instead, she felt the quiet satisfaction of two lives that had diverged but were finally at peace with one another. Rachel returned to her own world with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew her journey wasn't about reconciling with the past. It was about continuing to grow, to give, and to find fulfillment in the small, everyday victories that made life worthwhile. For the first time in years, Rachel wasn't chasing something. She was simply living, and for her, that was enough.